Coaches like to play in the gray, but on a score sheet that is black and white. In tumbling, you can max out on the United Scoresheet in the world's division without throwing a single running double full. When you go to worlds, you're not going to score well. For the love of Pete, can we not get the world's teams on the USASF score sheet for the entire year? Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Cheer Biz podcast. Today, we are reacting to Varsity coming out with the 2024-2025 United Scoring System updates, their proposed scoring system, and my thoughts on it. Now, before we get into the episode, head on over to Cheer Gym Owners on Facebook and All-Star Cheer Coaches and Owners as well, and join those groups if you have not already. Fantastic conversations going on in those. You're not going to want to miss out on them. Also, head on over to nextgenowners.com and make sure if you are interested in joining the Academy, you are doing it right now. We actually only have a few coaching spots left at the moment. And if you are headed to Dallas Conference, you're going to want to get in the Academy before conference happens so you can attend those Academy only tracks. They're going to be pretty fantastic. You're not going to want to miss them. I myself am leading a sales intensive course, and we are going to work on how to be a better salesperson in your gym and how to train your staff to be better salespeople. And if you're in the Academy, your staff can attend that session as well. So you're going to want to be there for that one. Now, let's get into the episode. So this week, Varsity came out with their update on the United Scoring System, and I've had the opportunity to read the email. I've had the opportunity to go through the new United Scoring System, and I'm going to give you my general reactions to this and kind of what I'm thinking. So number one, it's the same thing pretty much. It only changed things really on the lower end of numbers, which I understand if you're a team that has less athletes on it, that probably sounds great, but I was disappointed to not see any adjustments. So it's pretty much the same thing. The level appropriate documents look exactly the same. I'm not seeing anything that's really different. The scoring rubrics look pretty much exactly the same. A few little changes here and there, but nothing significant. If you are maxing out the score sheet on the United Scoring System this year, then you will be maxing out the score sheet with the same routine on the United Score Sheet next year. So it really has not changed at all. This has me befuddled. I don't understand why we are not making an adjustment. We know there is a significant problem in the industry with scoring not being aligned, and the fact that USASF and United Scoring System can't be the same thing is confusing. Now, I've already previously talked about on other episodes that I think the USASF scoring system is better. I vastly prefer it to the United Scoring System because it allows teams the ability to be the best and substantiate that they're the best and not operate on a quota point system, which I'm ultimately not a big fan of. I initially was optimistic about, and I had hopes and dreams for what it would mean, but I am not in love with quota points. I think it is not great for our sport and the growth of our sport as much as a more comparative system was. I liked that better, even though it has its shortcomings as well. I just don't love the quota points. Number two is kind of building on that, which is we deserve something different in the industry. We have tried this. We've shown that it has some significant shortcomings, and it's okay to make a change. Now, I know I'm in the minority. I know that there are people out there who are like, please stop changing the score sheet. Let us get this thing figured out. And do I think the United Scoring System right now is better than it used to be? Yes, but I still don't love it. I actually, even if we saved a difficulty driver similar to what the Open does, and I'm not an expert on the Open score sheet, but my understanding is that they have some difficulty range that judges can award based off of their subjective opinion on the skills that are performed. And I think that that's something that's missing on the United Scoresheet. There's no reward for doing anything extra, except maybe on the bottom half of the score sheet. And oftentimes what we're seeing is if you want to score really, really well in those things, you actually don't need to do anything more difficult. You just need to do motions in a prep and move around and do some creative motions. And then that stunt creativity skyrockets because it was entertaining to watch your sequence. And I would love to see there be a difficulty driver added to a subjective category where a judge gets to award that. Now, last year, it was that pace and connection driver, and it was only 1/10, and it was really didn't make sense. And it was like, well, pace and connection, what does that mean? I'm doing something on every 2 counts. We're changing and moving, and we still didn't get the driver. And then other teams would get the driver and they didn't do any of those things. So it got really confusing for coaches. Coaches like to play in the gray, but on a score sheet that is black and white, which I totally understand is really, really frustrating for those people trying to create the score sheet, because we as coaches are always trying to like find that gray area, find that more creative thing, find that way to work around the rule. But when they create the rules, when they create the scoring system, we're like, just tell me the answer. I want to know what the answer is to get the A. And it doesn't always work out that way. So I know that we create our own problems. My number 3 point on this is it's okay to have 2 years in a row where we don't make changes, but what's not okay is to not make changes because it's going to make people unhappy. If it is the right thing to do to make adjustments and to make changes, then we should make those changes. Now, this is me soapboxing for a couple seconds. My reaction is if we're on United, now I understand there's the open score sheet. I compete on the United score sheet, so I talk about that a lot. There is the open scoring system, and it sounds like it's fantastic in a lot of ways. Now, if United scoring is also falling under USASF in terms of all United events are USASF sanctioned events, why, as the top deciding body, is the USASF not saying this is the scoring standard for our industry? That's really what I would love to see, is the USASF step up and say, hey, to be a USASF sanctioned event, you have to use our scoring system. We're going to make it consistent across the board, because that would then at least make it so all of the world's events that offer world's bids would have to be on the USASF scoring system, which would create some alignment, because even now you can have USASF sanctioned events that are on different score sheets that use the USASF score sheet, that use the United score sheet, so it can create confusion. Number 4, this is my just praying to the gods, and I've mentioned it on other episodes, and I know it doesn't impact everyone, but for the love of Pete, can we not get the world's teams on the USASF score sheet for the entire year? And I hope someone who's a world's coach yelled out, say it louder for the people in the back. But can we not do this? I understand that it requires us to have better judges at events, but at most World's Bids events, there are world's judges there, in my experience. Now, I don't know if that's fully true, but in my experience, that's what I see. And it is asinine to have world's athletes competing on a score sheet that doesn't reflect how they're going to score on the USASF score sheet. The United score sheet is built in a code of points, meaning you do those skills and you don't do anything extra. You do the baskets that are required, you don't do any extra. Well, on the USASF score sheet, there is ranges for those things. There's also required skills for some things. So if you're a team that only does the bare minimum of jumps, you're actually not going to max your jump difficulty on the world score sheet. If you just jump the minimum number of people with the minimum number of jumps, you're going to score lower in jump difficulty. And in tumbling, you can max out on the United score sheet in the world's division without throwing a single running double full. When you go to worlds, you're not going to score well. You are not going to score well in running tumbling. So we're giving teams inflated opinion on how they're going to perform at Worlds. It's not fair to those kids who are thinking, man, we've been scoring 96s this year. We've been scoring 97s. We're going to go to Worlds and we're going to get like 150. We're going to crush this thing. And then they go to Worlds and they get a 110. then they're confused. Well, we've done so well all season. Yeah, but you're not throwing the skills that are going to be rewarded on the USASF score sheet. Also, if you do more stunts, you're more likely to score higher in stunt difficulty. Whereas on the varsity score sheet, there's no point in doing any more than your 4 stunts unless you're worried about having a safety skill, because the likelihood is you're only going to run risk of dropping. My highest scoring routine was my most basic routine. I took out all the creativity. I gave my kids lots of counts in between stunts. I just said, I just want you to keep your stunts in the air. I just want to hit our drivers that we're supposed to get. We were going USASF style where we were going ham. And when we competed at jams, we scored decently. We got some really good feedback. We made some adjustments, but if I had done the same routine on the USASF score sheet, we would have scored significantly lower. We wouldn't have gotten the 128 we got at jams. We would have gotten probably a 118. And that is doing those world's teams and those world athletes a disservice. So that's my soapbox. I think we can do better at this, and I think it will help the industry as a whole. It will help athletes perform better at Worlds, and it will help coaches have clarity going from event to event to event with one consistent score sheet, not bouncing back and forth. Now, I get that event producers can all choose to go to one score sheet as well. That could be a solution. You don't have to do what I think, right? If you want to keep the United Scoresheet, whatever your score sheet you create, I feel I'm a good enough coach and my coaches are good enough that we're going to figure out how to max out that score sheet and be competitively successful. I do appreciate, this is kind of my closing thought. I do appreciate that they got this information out really early comparatively to years before. So now we're going into the tryout season with the knowledge that the score sheet isn't changing very much. We know what's expected of us so we can build teams accordingly and correctly. I also think that the United Scoresheet did some really good things in terms of decreasing some of the tumbling requirement to allow teams to be built for success across the board, having a more broadly skilled team. So you can have those kids who don't have all the tumbling skills because they're amazing backspotter, because they're amazing flyer. And realistically, that is what makes sense. Every single human doesn't have to do the standing tumbling pass. Every single person shouldn't have to do the running tumbling pass. Now, if you can do that, should you be rewarded? I think so. And that's where I think there's a little bit of a conflicting opinion, even within myself, right? There's dissonance there. I want to be rewarded for having all of my kids perform the skill, but I also think that it's good for the industry to not require teams to be built based off of every kid having the skill, because that creates 2 things. 1, it limits accessibility for athletes, and 2, it encourages teams to go super duper small. And if you've listened to the podcast many times, you know I am not a fan of super small teams. I think they're a horrible decision because they are not as profitable. They have to be more expensive to be profitable and to help sustain the business. You have to jack up those prices because those 11 kids have to cover more, and they're taking up the same amount of hours in the gym as a team of 30. So I'm a big fan of larger teams. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the episode. I don't have a call to action for you other than if you're a United Scoring System person, make sure you read through the new rubric and all of the level appropriate examples. Make sure I didn't miss something and you're not missing something that you need to be prepared for. And then take that information and go forth and have the best possible tryout season, evaluation season you can have, and build your teams effectively and profitably. All right, everyone. Check out the other podcasts we partner with, the Let's Talk Cheer podcast and the Cheer Mom podcast. Great podcasts. You got to listen to them. With that, we'll catch you on the next episode.